The station called Axiom Prime was the largest thing ever built by living hands. It floated in the empty space around a dying red star, far from any planet or moon. This was neutral ground. This was where the galaxy came to talk, to argue, and to judge. Ambassador stood alone in the center of the great chamber. She was a small woman with dark hair pulled back tight and eyes that watched everything. Around her, rising up in circles that seemed to go on forever, sat the representatives of 4,000 alien species. Some were made of crystal that sang when they moved. Some were clouds of living gas held in magnetic bottles. Some had too many legs, too many eyes, or no body at all. Was the only human in the room. She was also the smallest thing in it. The great chamber was built for giants. The seats were made for creatures 10 times her size. The air was cold and thin, adjusted for species that breathed different things. Wore a small mask that helped her breathe, and a translator chip behind her ear that turned alien sounds into words she could understand. Today was Judgment Day for humanity. High Arbiter sat on a platform high above everyone else. He was ancient beyond measure, a being of living crystal that had seen stars born and die. His species, had been traveling between worlds when humans were still learning to walk upright. He glowed with a soft blue light as he prepared to speak. The chamber fell silent. 4,000 species stopped their talking, their clicking, their electromagnetic pulses. Everyone listened. "We have studied the species known as humanity," began. His voice was like wind chimes in a storm. "We have examined their biology, their history, their technology, and their potential. After careful review, the conclave has reached a decision." Stood perfectly still. Her heart was beating fast, but her face showed nothing. "Humanity is hereby classified as a Tier 7 species." The chamber erupted in noise. Clicks, howls, flashes of light, bursts of radio waves. Translator struggled to keep up, but she caught enough. Tier 7, the lowest ranking, reserved for species that were considered useless at best and targets at worst. Raised a crystalline limb, and the noise died down. "The evidence supports this classification. Humans possess no natural armor. Their skin can be cut by simple tools. They have no venom, no claws worth mentioning, no ability to regenerate lost limbs." A creature that looked like a spider made of shadow clicked in agreement. Its translator spoke in a flat voice. "Prey species, obvious prey species." Continued. "Humans cannot survive temperature changes that most species consider minor. A shift of 30 degrees in either direction can kill them. They require constant intake of water and food. They must sleep for a third of their lives or they begin to malfunction." More sounds of agreement from the chamber. "Their technology is primitive. They have only recently discovered faster-than-light travel, and their version is slow and inefficient. Their weapons are crude. Their medicine is basic. By the standards of the interstellar commonwealth, they are children who have barely learned to walk." Listened to all of this without moving. Her hands were folded in front of her. Her breathing was slow and steady. Furthermore, said, "Humans come from a world classified as a Category 5 death world. While this might suggest they are dangerous, the opposite is true. Humans are the weakest creatures on their own planet. They evolved not as predators, but as prey. They have no natural defenses. They survived only by hiding, by running, by being too small and too weak to be worth hunting." A being of living flame flickered with what might have been laughter. A prey species from a death world. How did they even survive long enough to develop intelligence? "An excellent question," replied. "One that science has yet to answer satisfactorily. It appears to be simple luck. They found caves to hide in. They learned to make simple tools. They avoided the true predators of their world until they could build walls high enough to keep them out." His expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes, something cold. Finally, said, "There is the matter of there. Humans live, on average, less than 100 years. Many species in this chamber live for thousands. Some of us have existed for millions. To the conclave, humans are mayflies. They are born, they flutter briefly, and they die. They do not have time to accumulate wisdom, to develop patience, to see the long patterns of history." The High Arbiter's crystal form pulsed with light. "For all these reasons, the conclave classifies humanity as Tier 7, a minor species with no significant military, economic, or cultural value. They will be permitted to exist within Commonwealth space, but will have no voting rights, no territorial claims, and no protected status. They are, in the judgment of this body, simply not important enough to matter." The chamber filled with sounds of approval. 4,000 species agreed. Humans were weak, primitive, and irrelevant. Looked down at the small figure standing alone on the chamber floor. Ambassador, before this classification is made official, you have the right to speak. Do you have any words for the conclave? Looked up at the ancient being. She looked around at the thousands of aliens who had just declared her entire species worthless. She thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea their fate was being decided in this cold room among the stars. Then she smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that made the beings closest to her shift uncomfortably in their seats, though they could not have explained why. Yes, said, her voice was quiet, but the chamber's perfect acoustics carried it to every ear and sensor. I would like to speak. She took a step forward, just one small step, but somehow it felt larger than it should have. I would like to tell you a story, she said. A story about my people, a story about what we are and what we have done and what we are capable of. She paused, and her smile grew wider. And then, she said softly, I would like you to reconsider your classification. The chamber was silent. 4,000 species watched the small, soft, fragile human, waiting to hear what she could possibly say that would change their minds. They had no idea what was coming, did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The great chamber was built to carry even the softest whisper to every corner, and right now, every being in the room was listening. High Arbiter, she began, I have a question before I tell my story. May I ask it? Crystalline form pulsed with mild surprise. This was not how these things usually went. Species declared Tier 7 usually begged or argued or simply accepted their fate. They did not ask questions. You may, he said. Which species in this chamber is the oldest? Which one has existed the longest? A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Himself answered. My people, we achieved space travel 17 million years ago. We have watched galaxies change shape. We are the eldest of the Commonwealth. Nodded respectfully. 17 million years, that is truly impressive. I mean no disrespect when I ask my next question. Ask. In those 17 million years, how many extinction-level events has your species survived? The chamber went quiet. Light flickered, the equivalent of a frown. One, he admitted after a long pause. Our home star began to die. We moved to new systems. You had ships, said. You had technology. You simply flew away from the danger. Yes. My species is 200,000 years old. Held up her hands, showing their softness, their lack of claws. In that time, we have survived 23 extinction-level events, ice ages that covered our world in frozen death, massive volcanic eruptions that blocked out our sun for years, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed more than half our population. She paused, letting that number sink in. We survived all of them, not by flying away. We had no ships. We had no advanced technology. We survived by simply refusing to die. A being that looked like a massive insect clicked its mandibles. Impossible. No prey species could survive such events without protection. Turned to face the creature. Let me tell you about the ice ages. Imagine a world where the temperature drops so far that water becomes solid rock, where the air itself tries to freeze your lungs, where food becomes so scarce that entire species starve to death in a single season. She began to walk slowly around the chamber floor, her footsteps echoing in the silence. My ancestors had no fur thick enough to survive such cold. They had no caves deep enough to wait it out. So they did something that no other species on our world could do. They killed the animals that did have thick fur, and they wore their skins. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably. The idea was disturbing to them. They built fires, continued. They learned to create their own warmth. They walked across frozen wastelands following herds of animals, hunting them, eating them, wearing them. The Ice Age lasted thousands of years. My ancestors walked through all of it. She stopped and looked up at. Then there was, 74,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted on our world. It was one of the largest explosions in our planet's history. The sky went dark. The temperature dropped. Plants died. Animals died. Our population fell to fewer than 10,000 individuals. The number sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. 10,000 individuals was nothing. It was a rounding error. It was the point where most species would simply give up and accept extinction. We should have died, said. By every measure, by every prediction, by every scientific model, we should have gone extinct. We were too few. We had no technology. We were surrounded by predators who were stronger, faster, and better adapted than us. Her voice hardened. We did not die, we bred, we fought. We spread out across the world until there were too many of us to kill, and we kept going, we kept surviving, we kept refusing. A creature of living plasma pulsed with electromagnetic confusion. But how? You had no advantages, you were weak. Smiled that cold smile again. You keep using that word, weak. I do not think you understand what it means when applied to humans. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stone. It was rough, chipped at the edges, shaped by ancient hands. This is called a hand axe. It is one of the oldest tools my species ever made. We could not bite through hide, so we made sharp edges to cut it. We could not chase prey at high speed, so we did something else. She held up the stone, turning it so the light caught its edges. We chased them slowly. We followed them, for hours, for days. We followed them until they collapsed from exhaustion because humans can run longer and farther than almost any other animal on our world. We cannot win a sprint, but we always win the marathon. Our prey would flee from us in terror, and we would simply follow, walking, jogging, never stopping. And when they finally fell, when their hearts gave out from the effort of trying to escape, we would catch up to them and use tools like this to take what we needed. The chamber was utterly silent now. You call us prey, said quietly. But there is something you need to understand about humans. We were never content to be prey. We looked at the predators of our world, the great cats, the wolves, the creatures with claws and fangs and strength, and we did not run from them. We did not hide from them. We studied them. We learned their weaknesses, and then we killed them. She put the stone back in her pocket. Every apex predator that ever threatened humanity is now either dead, caged in our zoos, or so reduced in number that they survive only because we allow them to. We did not defeat them with superior strength. We defeated them with patience, with tools, with teamwork, and with the absolute refusal to accept our place at the bottom of the food chain. Walked back to the center of the chamber and stood looking up at the assembled aliens. You have classified us as Tier 7, weak, harmless, irrelevant. She tilted her head. But you have made an error in your calculations, a very dangerous error. High Arbiter leaned forward, and what error would that be? His eyes were steady and cold. You looked at our soft skin and saw vulnerability. You looked at our short lives and saw insignificance. You looked at our primitive technology and saw weakness. She shook her head slowly. You never stopped to ask the most important question. Which is, if we are so weak, said softly, how are we still here? The question hung in the air, and for the first time, 4,000 species began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. The conclave demanded proof. Words were easy, but the Commonwealth ran on data, on evidence, on cold, hard facts that could be measured, and High Arbiter's crystalline voice cut through the growing murmur of the chamber. These are impressive claims, Ambassador, but claims require evidence. Show us your data. Nodded, she had expected this. She pressed a small device on her wrist, and the air above the chamber floor came alive with holographic images. Let me show you what humans are capable of, she said. The first image showed a human body, soft, unarmored, fragile-looking. The aliens watched with mild contempt, but then the display began to change, showing what happened when that body was damaged. Humans can lose up to 40% of their blood and survive, explained. We can lose limbs and survive. We can lose eyes, ears, kidneys, and parts of our liver. We can lose entire sections of our brain and not only survive, but adapt and continue functioning. A species that communicated through bioluminescence flashed in disbelief. Their translator spoke. Impossible. Brain damage is fatal, always. Not for humans, pulled up medical records. We have documented cases of humans losing half their brain, literally half, and learning to walk, talk, and live normal lives. The remaining brain tissue rewires itself. It takes over the functions of the missing parts. It adapts. The chamber went quiet again. We cut ourselves open to fix ourselves, continued. We call it surgery. When an organ fails, we remove it and replace it with one from another human or sometimes with machines. When bones break, we put metal rods inside them to make them stronger. When our hearts stop working, we can shock them back to life with electricity. She showed images of operating rooms, of surgeons with their hands inside open chest cavities. of patients recovering from procedures that looked like torture. You look at this and think it is primitive, said. I look at this and see a species that refuses to let death win. We fight it every single time, and sometimes we actually win. A liquid being in a containment pod bubbled with what might have been horror. You let others cut you open while you are still alive. Yes, we invented ways to block pain so we can remain conscious while our bodies are repaired, smiled. But pain itself is something you should understand about humans. She pulled up new data, records of soldiers in battle, athletes pushing past their limits, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Humans can feel enormous pain and keep functioning. Our bodies produce chemicals that allow us to ignore injuries that should stop us completely. We have records of soldiers continuing to fight with wounds that would kill most species instantly. Broken bones, massive blood loss, missing limbs. They kept fighting until their mission was complete or their bodies physically could not move anymore. A military commander from a warrior species leaned forward with new interest. This is true, they can ignore such damage. Not ignore, corrected. They feel everything, they just refuse to let it stop them. There is a human saying, pain is just weakness leaving the body. She paused. It is not literally true, of course, but it shows how we think about suffering. It is not an end, it is just another obstacle to overcome. She changed the display again, showing something that made even the most hardened beings uncomfortable. Images of humans deliberately harming themselves. We poison ourselves for pleasure, said calmly. We consume chemicals that damage our organs because we enjoy how they make us feel. We expose ourselves to radiation from our own sun until our skin burns and peels, and we call this relaxation. We eat foods so spicy they cause physical pain, and we consider this a treat. The spider shadow creature clicked rapidly. This is insanity. Perhaps, nodded. Or perhaps it shows that we have a very different relationship with pain and damage than other species. We do not fear it the way you do. We do not avoid it at all costs. Sometimes we even seek it out. She closed the medical data and pulled up something new, psychological profiles. But our bodies are not the strangest thing about us. Let me tell you about our minds. The images showed humans with animals, dogs, cats, horses, birds. Humans holding them, playing with them, sleeping beside them. We have an ability that your scientists have noted but never truly understood. We call it pack bonding. Humans can form emotional connections with almost anything. Animals, objects, even machines. Once we decide something is part of our group, we will protect it with the same intensity we protect our own families. This is a weakness, an hive mind stated. Emotional attachment to non-humans reduces efficiency. Turn to face the speaker. The wolves of our world were apex predators. They hunted in packs, coordinated, deadly. They were a threat to early humans. Do you know what we did to them? Killed them, obviously. Some of them, yes, but others? Smiled. Others we fed, we gave them food, we showed them kindness. Over generations, they began to trust us. They began to follow us. They began to love us. She showed images of dogs. Loyal, eager, devoted dogs. We took wolves, the predators who hunted our ancestors, and we turned them into our best friends. They guard our homes now, they help our blind see, they comfort our sick, they die for us and we die for them. This is, paused, his crystal form flickering, this is extraordinary. We have done it with many species, cats, horses, birds. We take things that were wild and dangerous and we make them ours through nothing but patience and affection. Eyes were bright. But here is the part you should really pay attention to. She lowered her voice. We do it with machines too. We give our tools names. We talk to our computers. We feel sad when our robots break. We have made stories for thousands of years about falling in love with artificial beings. She stepped forward. We will pack bond with anything, absolutely anything. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. Including all of you. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. You see us as weak, said softly. But what I see when I look at this chamber is 4,000 potential friends, 4,000 species we could bond with, protect, and be protected by in return, 4,000 families we could join. She paused, and her voice grew harder. Or if you force us to see you differently, 4,000 species we would study until we knew every weakness. 4,000 threats we would work to neutralize. 4,000 problems we would solve with the same relentless patience we used to defeat every predator on our world. She spread her hands. The choice is yours, but before you make it, there is one more thing you need to understand about humanity. His tone changed. Until now, she had been explaining, teaching, sharing information. But as she began to speak again, something in her voice shifted. It was harder now, colder. This was not education anymore. This was a warning. Let me tell you what happened to the other species on Earth who underestimated us, she said. She pulled up images of creatures that no longer existed. Massive beasts with long, curved tusks and thick fur. Giant cats with fangs as long as human arms. Bears that stood 3 times the height of a man. Birds with wings wide enough to block out the sun. These are the megafauna of our world, the great beasts. Each one was stronger, faster, and more dangerous than any human. Walked among the holographic images, her small form dwarfed by the ancient monsters. They had claws that could tear through stone. They had hide so thick our first weapons bounced off. They had been the rulers of our world for millions of years. She stopped and turned to face the chamber. They are all gone now. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled aliens. We did not defeat them in fair combat, continued. We were too weak for that, remember? We were soft, fragile, slow, so we did not fight fair. We dug pits and covered them with leaves so the great beasts would fall in and break their legs. We set fires to drive them off cliffs. We poisoned water holes. We attacked their young when the adults were away. We hunted at night when they expected to be safe. Her voice was calm, almost casual. That made it worse. We were patient. Sometimes it took generations to wipe out a species. But we had something they did not have, memory. We remembered grudges. We remembered which creatures had killed our family members, which ones had stolen our food, which ones were threats. And we passed those memories to our children, and they passed them to their children, and eventually every debt was paid. The warrior species commander spoke, his voice uncertain for the first time. You are describing extinction events, deliberate ones. Yes, nodded. Humans do not just defeat enemies, we end them, completely, permanently. She paused. It is not something we are proud of. Many of us today wish we had been wiser, more careful, but it is the truth of what we are capable of when we decide something is a threat. She showed new images, skeletal remains, reconstruction drawings, museum exhibits. The Neanderthals were our closest relatives. They were stronger than us, with larger brains and bodies better adapted to cold. By every measure, they should have been the dominant species. They were not prey, they were competitors. His eyes were hard. They are extinct. We are still here. Scientists still argue about exactly what happened, but the outcome is not in question. Where they stood, we now stand. Where they lived, we now live. High Arbiter's crystal form had gone dim, its usual bright light fading to a troubled flicker. You are saying your species committed genocide. I am saying that when humans encounter a species that threatens our survival, we do whatever is necessary to ensure that we survive instead. His voice was quiet but carried throughout the chamber. Not because we are evil, not because we enjoy it, but because survival is coded into every cell of our bodies. It is the one lesson 200,000 years of extinction events has taught us. Never, ever let something else decide whether you live or die. She dismissed the ancient images and stood alone on the chamber floor again. You have classified us as Tier 7, harmless, unimportant. This classification tells the rest of the galaxy that humanity can be ignored, exploited, or conquered without consequence. She tilted her head. I wonder if you have considered what message that sends to us. The chamber was absolutely silent. When humans feel safe, we are the best friends you could ever have. We will work with you, trade with you, share our discoveries with you. We will bond with you, protect you, love you. This is our nature when we do not feel threatened. Took a step forward, and beings far larger than her shifted back without meaning to. But when humans feel threatened, when we believe our survival is at risk, we become something else entirely. We become the thing that hunted mammoths across frozen wastelands, the thing that drove predators to extinction with nothing but rocks and patience, the thing that turned wolves into pets and fire into a weapon. She looked around the chamber slowly. You are 17 million years old, she said to. You have seen many species rise and fall. Let me ask you something. In all those millions of years, have you ever seen a species that destroyed its own planet with nuclear weapons and then kept living there anyway? His light flickered with something that might have been shock. No, such species typically do not survive such events. We did. Twice we came close to destroying ourselves completely. The first time was called the Cuban Missile Crisis. The second was the Pacific War. Both times we had enough weapons to burn our entire world to ash and kill every living thing on its surface. Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Both times we stepped back from the edge, not because we were weak, because we chose to. She let that sink in. We are the species that invented the atomic bomb and then decided not to use it again. We are the species that built weapons that could end all life on our planet and then created treaties to limit them. We are the species that fights and fights and fights, and then, when we have won, offers peace. Her voice softened. This is my warning to you, High Arbiter, not a threat. A warning. If you classify us as prey, we will eventually believe you mean to treat us as prey. And then you will see what happens when 8 billion humans decide they are fighting for survival. She spread her hands. You will not like it. We will not like it. Nobody will win such a war. We know this because we have fought enough wars among ourselves to understand. But we will fight it anyway because that is what we do. We fight until we cannot fight anymore, and then we find a way to keep fighting. Lowered her hands. Or you could make a different choice. You could recognize that humans are not prey, not predators, but something in between, something new. Something that could be either your greatest ally or your worst nightmare, depending on how you treat us. She looked up at. The choice is yours, but choose carefully. We have been patient for 200,000 years. We can be patient a little longer. The great chamber of Axiom Prime had witnessed many things in its long history. Treaties signed between ancient enemies. Declarations of war that had burned across 1,000 star systems. The rise and fall of empires that had seemed eternal. But it had never witnessed anything quite like this. 4,000 species sat in absolute silence, staring at the small human woman standing alone on the chamber floor. Beings of crystal and flame, of shadow and light, of flesh and metal, all of them frozen in place, struggling to process what they had just heard. High Arbiter was the first to find his voice. His crystalline form flickered with colors no human eye could name as he spoke. Ambassador, are you threatening the conclave? Laughed, it was a genuine sound, warm and almost friendly, and somehow that made it more unsettling than any threat could have been. Threatening you? No, High Arbiter, I am not threatening anyone. She shook her head, still smiling. I am explaining why a threat is not necessary. I do not understand. Began to walk again, slowly circling the chamber floor, looking up at the assembled delegates as she spoke. You have given us the stars. Do you understand what that means to a species that spent 100,000 years looking up at the night sky and dreaming? You have given us everything we ever wanted. Her voice was soft with genuine wonder. We are out here now among you, learning your languages, studying your technologies, meeting your children. She stopped and turned to face a section of the chamber where the younger species sat, beings who had only recently joined the Commonwealth, who were still learning its ways. Your engineers have noticed something interesting about humans. When we study your technology, we do not just copy it. We change it. We improve it, sometimes in ways your scientists say should not work. She smiled. Your basic FTL drive design has remained unchanged for 3 million years. Our engineers have been playing with it for 10 years, and already we have found ways to make it 15% more efficient. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. They had heard these reports. They had dismissed them as exaggeration. This is what humans do, continued. We see something that works and we ask, how can we make it better? How can we push it further? How can we break the rules that everyone says cannot be broken? She shrugged. Sometimes we fail, but sometimes we succeed, and when we succeed, we change everything. She walked back to the center of the chamber. I did not come here to threaten you. I came here to offer you something much more valuable. She extended her hand, palm up, an ancient gesture that meant the same thing in human culture as it had for thousands of years. Friendship. Stared at the small, extended hand. In his 17 million years, he had never seen a gesture quite like it. Friendship, he repeated. Yes, think about it. Humans are adaptable, creative, stubborn, and loyal to anything we consider part of our pack. We breed quickly, we learn quickly, and we never, ever give up. Eyes were bright. Instead of treating us as prey to be ignored, treat us as equals to be respected. Instead of giving us reasons to see you as threats, give us reasons to see you as family. She lowered her hand, but kept her eyes on the High Arbiter. In return, you will have 8 billion humans working alongside you, building with you, creating with you, protecting you because that is what we do for the people we love. She paused. And believe me, once humans decide we love something, we will burn down the universe to keep it safe. The chamber remained silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of contempt. It was the silence of beings who were rapidly reconsidering everything they thought they knew. Spoke slowly, his crystal voice thoughtful. You say you are offering friendship, but your words have been full of warnings about what happens if we refuse. This seems contradictory. It is not, shook her head. I am simply being honest with you. Humans value honesty. We would rather know exactly where we stand with someone, even if the truth is uncomfortable. She met his glowing eyes without flinching. I have told you what we are capable of, what we want, and what will happen if we feel threatened. I have hidden nothing from you. This is unusual. Yes, but you will find that humans often do things other species consider unusual. Smiled again, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. We are strange, we are complicated, we are sometimes frightening and sometimes wonderful, often at the same time. But we are sincere. When a human offers you friendship, they mean it. And when a human tells you they will stand beside you no matter what, they mean that too. She took a breath. So I ask you again, High Arbiter, conclave of the interstellar commonwealth, will you accept our friendship? Will you recognize us not as prey, not as threats, but as partners? Will you give humanity a chance to show you what we can be when we are not fighting for survival? She extended her hand again. Or will you force us to be something else? The chamber held its breath. 17 million years of wisdom and experience wrestled with its ancient consciousness. He had seen species come and go. He had watched civilizations rise and fall. He thought he had seen everything the universe had to offer. But he had never seen anything like this. A prey species from a death world that had refused to die. A soft, fragile, short-lived creature that had somehow survived everything its planet could throw at it. A species that could be the best friend you ever had, or the worst enemy you could imagine. He looked at the small human's extended hand. He thought about what she had said, about the data she had shown, about the implications of everything he had learned in the past hour. And for the first time in his very long life, felt something cold move through his crystalline structure. It was not fear exactly. It was something more like recognition. He had seen this pattern before, species that should have been destroyed but somehow were not. Species that adapted, that refused, that grew. The difference was, those species had taken millions of years to become dangerous. Humanity had done it in 200,000. The classification will be reconsidered, said slowly. His voice echoed through the suddenly very quiet chamber. Humanity is hereby designated as Tier 1, Special Observation Status, full membership pending review. The chamber erupted. Protests, shock, outrage, confusion. Species that had dominated the Commonwealth for millions of years could not believe what they were hearing. A Tier 7 classification reversed in a single hour. It was unprecedented. It was impossible. But had made his decision, and his word was law. Lowered her hand and nodded politely. Thank you, High Arbiter. I look forward to a long and productive friendship between our peoples. She turned and began walking toward the chamber exit. Behind her, 4,000 species watched in stunned silence as the small human moved through the door and disappeared. In the corridor outside, activated a private communication channel back to Earth. Her hand was steady, but her heart was racing. It worked, we are in. There was a moment of silence, and then the voice of the Earth Council chair came through. Well done, Ambassador. What is our status? Tier 1, Special Observation, full membership in 1 year if we play this right. Excellent, the chair paused. And the conclave, how did they take your presentation? Looked back at the closed doors of the great chamber. She could still feel the weight of 4,000 alien gazes on her. They are scared, she said quietly. They will not admit it, but they are scared. They looked at us and saw what we really are. And what is that? Smiled, the same cold smile she had worn when she first stood before the conclave. The species that refuses to lose. Back in the chamber, High Arbiter sat motionless on his platform, his ancient mind processing everything that had happened. Around him, the other delegates argued and debated, but he did not hear them. He was thinking about something the human had said, something that had lodged itself in his consciousness and would not let go. We are patient. We have been patient for 200,000 years. They had been traveling the stars for 17 million years. They had seen countless species come and go. They had always believed that time was on their side, that patience was their greatest strength. But now, watching the door through which the human had disappeared, found himself wondering if perhaps the galaxy had just met a species that was even more patient than his own. And that thought, more than anything else, made him very afraid indeed. Outside, in the cold light of the dying red star, stood at a viewport and looked out at the infinite darkness of space. Humanity had taken its first real step into the galaxy, not as prey, not as conquerors, but as something new, something that the universe had never seen before. She did not know what would come next. None of them did, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever enemies or friends humanity might find among the stars, one thing would never change. Humans did not give up. Humans did not surrender. And humans, no matter what, refused to be weak. The galaxy would learn. One way or another, the galaxy would learn. Smiled and turned away from the viewport, ready to face whatever came next. The stars were waiting, and humanity had just begun.